Hello, everybody. Welcome back to yet another fantabulous genre, guys. We are so pleased and grateful that you are here with us today. For those of you who are with the Pro Show, the members, thank you for sticking with us for so long. For those of you who are part of T3PO and are seeing us, we are very grateful, and you should consider becoming a member for the Pro channel so that you can get early access to these fantastic reviews. If you did, I would in fact call you my hero. What about you guys? No? Yeah.
Well, and with the internet, everything is local, right?
Oh, there we go. All right. So
That's where you were heading with that.
That's where I was heading. Yeah. Am I that obvious? So, Local Hero, the movie. What to say about this film? This film was, if, as you said, Lou, in the back channels before we began, if the previous stuff that we've done was kind of high octane, adrenaline, semi insane, I'm looking at you, Battlefield Earth. This is like a step back, kicking it back in sort of like a recliner chair and being like, all right, wait a minute, we need to take a little bit of a breather. I would describe this film as comfy, and I'm still a little bit of mixed mind, a bit of a mixed mind on this film, but I'll get into that in a little bit. But Lou, Lorn, how did you guys like this movie?
I want to go first, Lou, or?
Well, I'll just say comfy and then some. And it's a character study more than anything else. And it's, this is a modern film. It's a film about the oil industry to some degree and all that. But this could be, I don't know, a legend about leprechauns, or not leprechauns because it's Scotland, not Ireland. But it has a kind of universality to it, a kind of eternality to it that I think is awfully charming. And, of course, the people involved, when you go everywhere from Peter Riegert to Burt Lancaster, and you have the producer of Chariots of Fire, and you have the lovely scenery and atmosphere of Scotland in the wild and far north edge of it, and you throw in the oil business and a mermaid in a way. I just think it's got so much going on, and it's about how people who think they have a certain attitude towards the world. I mean, we'll get into it obviously, but somebody who thinks their whole life is about their car and their job and their big city, who suddenly finds another world and thinks, maybe I should go the other way. Maybe I should go to the simple. And when you top all that off with comets and the Northern Lights and astronomy and helicopters and a rabbit.
And fighter jets.
Yes. And anyway, I just think it is. The word, you got the word right. It's cozy. And then you throw in Mark Knopfler from Dire Straits doing this amazing musical score. It's got a lot to offer.
Well, the one thing that I think might entice our members and the listeners, or watchers rather, from T3PO is the fact that this film stars Wedge Antilles of the Death Star Trench Run fame versus Peter Capaldi as the Doctor. Kind of, sort of, maybe.
Yes, long before he was ever a glimmer in Gallifrey's eye.
Yes. But after Denis Lawson was Wedge in Star Wars, this came after that. So,
yes, Lawson, by the way.
Lawson, sorry, my apologies.
Yeah,
this would have been the same year that Return of the Jedi came out. So
right, 83.
Yeah, so he was probably filming both of these movies real close to each other.
So to go from idyllic, scenic, laid back Scotland, a sort of a tiny little cove in Scotland, to an epic fight against the Empire, that must have been quite a bit of a whirlwind. Well,
yeah, I would imagine that this was probably a bit more fun for him just because of how much action he gets during the movie.
That's true. That is true. It was he and his co-star got along quite well, from what you can tell. or what you can see. But I think we're being a little bit coy. Why don't we talk a little bit about what this movie is about? And I'm going to throw this poster back up here because it kind of gives you a pretty decent summary. A beautiful coastline, a rich oil man wants to develop it, a poor beach bum wants to live on it, an entire town wants to profit by it, and a real-life mermaid wants to save it. Only one of them will get their way.
Yes.
I don't know if I entirely agree with that, but it's a pretty good description that would pique interest.
Well, only one gets their way that they had at the beginning and still have at the end. I would say the others are converted to that way.
Yeah. Well, why don't we give a little bit of a synopsis? And Lorn, would you care to do the honors?
I can try, but
go for it.
The issue I think is going to be I've probably forgotten some of the names. So if you guys could supply them, that would be helpful.
All right.
So this movie is about, as stated, the Knox Oil Corporation that is wanting to purchase this entire community, essentially, around this bay in Scotland, where they have found this ideal location where they would be able to have this this refinery that they're going to put in. But they have to send somebody to negotiate to purchase all the land, hopefully at the most favorable terms that they can find. And so that's where Peter Riegert's character comes in, because he has a last name that they believe is Scottish. Turns out it's not. He's actually Hungarian. But that makes him the person to go and send. And McIntyre, right. And he believes this is going to lead to bigger and better things, because he's going to go upstairs to meet the big boss, played by Burt Lancaster, and this could lead to his elevation in the company. And so he is sent off to Scotland, where he is met by a local agent there, played by Peter Capaldi. And a lot of the movie is, in a way, a series of vignettes. It's not really a straight narrative. It's just these little slices in time. He meets various people, including a lady bioscientist who wants to preserve this bay for the study of all the marine life and the interesting currents that come up through from the Caribbean into this area and impact the ecosystem. The folks who live in this community are very working class people who are probably on the lower end of the economic scale, and so they're all actually very eager to sell. They're all thinking that they're going to be millionaires by making this deal.
By selling this town, basically, with the beach.
And there's some amusement here. I think the part that I like about the movie is that it perfectly captures, if you ever go to a place that you're not familiar with, at first everything seems strange and alien, and you also seem strange and alien to the people where you're going. But gradually you come to an understanding. You begin to find the rhythms of life in whatever place that you're at, and it becomes familiar to you, and you may make friends and come to like each other. There's this interesting interplay between McIntyre and Gordon, which is the character that Denis Lawson plays, where at first he kind of sees him as this big city jerk that he's gonna he's acting as the solicitor, the local solicitor, on working with McIntyre to bring this deal about for everybody in the town. And so Gordon is initially kind of trying to tell everybody in the town, look, let's not be too eager. Let's kind of string him along a little bit. Let's get as much money out of him as we can.
Take him for everything he's worth.
Right, because he knows this is a multi-million-dollar deal, and he wants to not only provide the best amount of resources that he can to each of these town people, but also skim as much off the top as he can, acting as their agent. And he kind of looks down his nose at these.
All I was going to say was that Riegert comes into this thinking, God, these country bumpkins, and they should be easy to. He's not looking to scam anybody, but he's looking to get the best deal he can to help his own career. And meanwhile, the country bumpkins want to look like a bunch of dummies only so they can fool him into thinking they're stupid in negotiation and actually get the best deal they can. So everybody is, in a good way, trying to outdo the other side. And suddenly they kind of change places because McIntyre becomes so fascinated and enchanted by the lower pace of life and the beauty of the nature, and the other people can't wait to get out of there because they know it's a hole in the wall no place that they'd love to be gone from. So,
And the funny thing about this is that it all happens so gradually, you almost don't notice it happening.
right.
And it happens organically and believably. You understand why he becomes enchanted with with this place. And while initially the townspeople and him are sort of looking at each other adversarially, they come to like each other. And that's part of the charm of the thing is they all kind of congenially get along. Nobody really has any bad feelings for each other. But what's interesting about this for the character of McIntyre is that as the deal gets closer and closer to closing, he starts to feel bad about it. He starts to feel like, I don't want to leave this place, and I don't want to see the natural beauty of this place despoiled. And what about this beautiful lady scientist who wants to have all of this preserved? She's going to be devastated when she finds out that we're here to destroy all of this stuff. And then it turns out there's one guy who it turns out has a historical claim to the strip of the beach that goes all around the bay, and he can hold up this entire deal. And so now he's kind of a lovable old fellow who lives on this shack. He's an eccentric who just happens to live there. Now the townspeople are thinking about turning against him because he's standing in the way of this. And this leads to an interesting resolution.
And curiously enough, the oil company's name, Knox Oil, and it's run by a guy named Happer. And they explain how that happened, that Happer's ancestor bought it, but unfortunately didn't change the name when he did. It turns out the original guy that started the company might be related to this beachcomber guy who has all the power because they have the same last name. So this whole issue of when is your name your background with this guy McIntyre, whose parents were Hungarian and picked something they thought sounded English when they came over, to this guy who it turns out might actually be related to the original owner of the oil company. And meanwhile, Burt Lancaster is the boss of the company, Mr. Happer, and he is a nut job on astronomy. and so before Riegert goes off to Scotland, he calls him in and tells him he thinks there's going to be a comet there. And he wants him to call him every night and tell him about the sky and what he sees in it. So the eccentrics abound in this movie, from the Scottish people to the Americans to Lancaster quite uniquely. And even there is a capitalistic Soviet fishing boat captain who apparently visits every so often. And so the variety of characters is really special. And I got to tell you the truth, part of the great skill of this movie by the writers and the director is the ability to introduce you to all these people in such a short period of time and such a complex bunch, and it all works. Anyway, and that's largely due to Bill Forsyth, who is probably one of the most famous directors from Scotland in that period. Some of you might have seen a movie he did before this called Gregory's Girl, and the one Comfort and Joy that he did afterwards. Anyway, there's a lot more going on here, both in the writing and directing and in the actual story, than you would ever suspect from all these pretty pictures of Scotland. But it's there and it's accessible. It's not so complicated that you're left in the dust, which is what would happen in a lot of other people's handling of this material.
Yeah, it's a really random movie, and random in the sense that these things just kind of happen throughout, and you watch it, and then you see it occur, and then it kind of, as he moves on to the next scene, it almost takes you a moment to process, and like, what was that? What did I just watch? Like, especially with Burt Lancaster's character and the psychologist he had hired to verbally abuse him.
Yes. That's hilarious. It's relatively irrelevant to the movie, but it's fun, and it gives, again, a texture. There would never be a guy getting paid apparently a lot of money by a mogul or anything else in Scotland's far flung to basically abuse his client to give him, I don't know, humility or whatever it's about. And it's just where they occasionally go in a good way from the sublime and the interesting and the complex to the just plain wacky.
To the
And
absurd. Yeah.
and that guy is out on the edge in Houston, the way that some of the characters in the town are out on the edge, even in Scotland. But
That's
the other
true.
people think they're a little offbeat. Well, for example, the pastor of the church is an African guy. Like, what's
Very
he doing
diverse,
there?
very diverse movie. Very diverse.
Before anybody cared about that word, yes, thank goodness.
Well,
And there's a great bit when he first meets him. Riegert says, "Well, I'm kind of here on a mission," and this black pastor says, "Yeah, so am I." To save souls.
That's a brilliant bit of foreshadowing there, though, too, because he says that, he came over and he never really quite escaped. And you get the impression the same thing happened to him as what Riegert is hoping is going to happen to him by the end of the movie. And I suspect the way the movie ends, I don't want to give that part away.
Right. I don't think we should.
But there's no way that I could not see him returning. That's just, it's assumed that I think that his heart is now cast there and he would have to return.
Yeah. And the mermaid may really be a mermaid. She's got did you notice she has webbed toes, right?
She did. Yep.
Yes.
She did have webbed toes. Yeah.
And there's a bit where Capaldi is talking to her, and he's talking about sailors that used to believe that
these sea lions,
seals
were mermaids, and she looks at him and she says, "Well, the sailors were wrong," with a certainty that implies greater knowledge.
Well, Peter Capaldi is instantly smitten with her, and he spends the entire movie chasing her while trying to avoid a rather interesting punk rock girl from the Scottish town who looks like that guy from The Voyage Home on the bus with Kirk and Spock.
Oh, yeah. I hadn't thought about it, but it's the same haircut. You're absolutely right.
Exactly the same haircut. So this film, it threw me for a little bit of a loop. Like, I mean, it's very much a Scottish, British, like European film in the sense that it's a slow burn. You're watching it, and I was kind of like, well, at halfway through, you're still not seeing any sort of real conflict. Like, yes, it looks like everybody wants the same thing, and I'm kind of thinking, like, where is this going? Like, what is the point of this film? And then you just kind of sit back and just go with it is the best way to describe it.
It pleasingly tells you, put aside your expectations, put aside what's the next thing in the plot, put aside your intense energy, and just let the world unfold for your amusement, the same way that the sky does when they're looking up at it and seeing the northern lights.
Well, if you don't mind me taking some time here, there's a few observations I want to make.
Not at all. Go for it.
Go ahead.
For the first hour of this movie, I wasn't quite sure what I thought of it. I wasn't sure if I was enjoying it. I was just kind of watching it and I think probably about like you feel.
Exactly. 100% the same thing. I'm like, what is this?
There came a point, and I can't even point to exactly when it was, when it hooked me solidly. And I think it might have been when he first arrives at the hotel with Capaldi's character, and they have to knock on the door and get him out of bed, and he's a little annoyed that he's got to give him a room here, and he asked for breakfast and it's early and he's grumpy and all this stuff.
This is Wedge, by the way.
Yes, the Denis Lawson character, Gordon. But they're asking, can you tell us where we can find the solicitor Urquhart? And they actually pronounce it horribly. And he says, yes, I can tell you that he'll definitely be in his office in about 15 minutes. It's just around the corner to the left. And so they go to the office, and it's none other than Gordon. It's the same guy. He's just doing two different jobs in two different places. And that was the start of the charm for me. The other part is, what was the name of the motorcycle rider? I can't remember his name. Was it Ricky? I think it was Ricky. Something like this. Every day he exits the hotel room and he almost gets run down by this guy on a motorcycle. And this guy on the motorcycle, you never really see him except on his bike. He never has any speaking parts. There's nothing like that. It's just...
You don't know who he is or why, but he's always running by that hotel at 100 miles an hour on his motorcycle. Yeah.
Right. And that was when the strength of the movie caught me. It's that it's about rhythms and characters. And what struck me about it is that there are all of these eccentric people, or that you would see as eccentric, that are just going about their lives and living their lives as they would any other day. And it reminded me of a couple of eccentric people that I encountered in my own life. When I first moved to the place where I was here, I lived in a small apartment building. And one day I was walking down the street, headed towards my apartment, coming home, and this lady leans out of her window and starts yelling at me, just screaming at me that she knew that I was in her apartment the previous night and that I had abused her. And she had called the police because she knew it was me because I was wearing this hat. And I froze in the middle of the street. And suddenly it's like, there was nobody else around, but she was yelling. And all I'm thinking is everybody in this neighborhood just heard that and thinks that I've attacked this woman. And I didn't know what to do. So I called the police myself. And they showed up and they said, "Oh, that's Crazy Evelyn." And I didn't know who Crazy Evelyn was because I was a brand new local. I had not encountered her before.
Hello, Evelyn, if you're watching.
No, she has since passed on. But she was well known in the community.
Had you been, I don't know, there for a week or two, you might have immediately thought, well, I know it wasn't me. And she's got to be, if she's this crazy with me, she's this crazy with everybody. And so I should probably not be anxietous. It's just the fact that you were new, that you were somebody from the outside and different the way that these guys are.
Right. And so what I found out about Crazy Evelyn, eventually, the policeman told me all about her. She had a sense of flair. She would wear these dresses and these large hats, and she would turn up at all of the city council meetings and interact with everybody there quite loudly. She would show up uninvited at weddings, at every wedding in town. She would eat all of the food of the spread, and everybody kind of knew her. And
you know what that reminds me of? The lady in The Lady Killers who keeps going to the cops with all of her theories about what's going on.
Very much the same kind of thing. And so what was kind of incredible about this is that she could harangue people and she could be sweet as pie the next time that you saw her. You never knew what you were going to get with Evelyn. But when she did pass on, it became a community event because besides the wedding, she would also turn up at funerals uninvited. And at her funeral, I think half the town showed up because everybody knew her, and that's kind of what some of the people in this movie are like. It's like I said, when you first arrive somewhere, you're a fish out of water. Everything seems foreign and strange, including the people. But as you get to know them, you start to appreciate their eccentricities, and they do the same to you. And eventually this begins to feel like home. And then when you have to go back to wherever your home is, suddenly it feels alien. You've been gone and you're back in your house and nothing has changed. And somehow that seems strange to you. And it takes a while to reacclimate to your own normal rhythms. And that's something this movie, I think, captured brilliantly. The other character that I felt like illustrated this perfectly was Happer, because, as you said, he's a very, very rich eccentric. And as it turns out, the oil rig is not such a big deal to him. He's looking for something. He is a titan of industry. That's why he's looking for a comet. He has something else he wants to put his name on. He doesn't care what he puts his name on. He just wants something else to put his name on. But he doesn't.
It's what do you get for the man who has everything?
Yeah.
Right. And he sent this guy McIntyre out. He's been talking to him this whole time that he's there in Scotland. He has no idea who he is. When he eventually arrives in Scotland himself, he thinks Capaldi's McIntyre because he's so unimportant, he doesn't even know. If you've ever interacted with people who have money, like serious money, they can be that way. They can be a little silly. I used to know an airline pilot who had made a pile in his career, and he retired and he built a multi-million-dollar house, and he had a friend of mine put an industrial-grade garbage disposal into his house. And he would show off. He would tell you, "Come over here and look at this garbage disposal." And he would feed whole corn cobs straight into the garbage disposal just to show it off. That's the kind of people that we're talking about. And this movie does that. That's why I wasn't sure what to think of it in the first hour. but I came to love this movie, and
I knew you would. I knew you would. You know, when you think about it, for those who know and love, as I do, Field of Dreams,
Oh, yeah.
Lancaster is playing a variation on that character that he also played so well of the what was it? Moonlight Graham, the former baseball player who became the doctor. He must have had so much fun with these things, because obviously in his later years he wasn't going to be, you know, the Birdman of Alcatraz or Gladiator or all those the trapeze, but he found these unique characters, or they found him, and he got it. He got what you just said about these guys, and he knew how to share it. And it almost makes you wonder when you see things like that, the bit where he doesn't even know who McIntyre is, which one of them he is. I wonder if that was his or the director's, or it was in the original script. And, you know, they just made it so much of the individual little characterizations of these guys comes out of, if you were a really wonderful actor and, like some do, sort of wrote your own little background of who this character is you're playing, it's the kind of thing that would come out of something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just like, folks, when you watch this, and I hope we're encouraging you to do that, watch it at night and watch it, you know, in a dim room with something comfortable, maybe some scotch, but in a way that you can relax and just let it work its magic, rather than feeling like, gee, what happens next? Gee, what happens next? It doesn't matter. It'll all be okay in the end. Just let them take hold of you and play.
With somebody you care about, if you
yes.
can.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's
And
just,
sorry,
it's just sweet. The word for this movie is sweet. And, you know, in between all of the big stars overacting with nose rigs, we need some of those to live in the bread of life and entertainment, I think.
And it's a very, again, it's a very much of a slice of life film. Certainly some of these characters, especially in the town, I would say their personalities are played up a little bit, I guess. But watching it, you could really get a sense that a town like this exists and people like that exist. And like, this is like a bit of a window to, if you ever wanted to time travel, like a certain doctor does in his blue box. If you ever wanted to travel to a tiny little beachside Scottish town in the 80s, this is your ticket.
Yeah, I thought this was a beautiful film. It did take me an hour to get there, though. So if you start to watch it and you're having some doubts, just stick with it. It grows on you, and
be patient. Yes.
Yeah, I think it's worth the investment.
So, guys, what did you like about this film, and what were you a little less keen on? And I'm going to start with you, Lou.
Well, you can tell how much I like it. It's always been one of my favorites. And I also think, although because of kind of strange rules on YouTube, I wish I could play you the theme song. I wish I could just play you that it's soft, it's magical, and it becomes, I was playing it for one of our channel compatriots, I guess it was yesterday. And he said, God, I grew up in New Jersey, and it sounds like a Scottish take on Springsteen. It's with the saxophone and the guitars, and yet it's anyway. I love the music, and I love the feel of it and the variety of the music. There's what they call a cleada, I think it is. It's kind of like a town party where everybody's there and drinking. Ceilidh, yeah. And you have the classical traditional stuff, and yet you don't. And you have these guys that occasionally get drunk and get in fights, and the next day they're all friends again. You know, you just understand that this town, this village, this continuum of a little bit of a society that you've never been to and you've only seen bad stereotypes of exists. And it is very easy in this movie to believe that town is really out there. I think somebody said it's kind of like Brigadoon, which, if you don't know Brigadoon, look that up. But it's this magical village that sort of shows up out of the mist once every so many years and then disappears into the pages of time. And I think if you went to that town, 100 years before this story takes place, and people had no clue what the hell an oil rig was, they'd still get it.
Mhm.
They'd still get it. The oil rig, and again, I don't know why I keep using Irish images rather than Scottish ones, because they're certainly different. But the oil riches are the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, in a way, that everybody doesn't really believe they'll ever see, but hey, they'll hang around and see if maybe it shows up someday. And then it does. And now what do? And you don't want to screw it up, but you also don't want it to slip through your fingers.
Well, that was one of the funnier lines in the movie when you get these old men. The deal is not concluded yet, but they're already discussing what they're going to do with their riches. This
Right.
guy says, gosh, I just don't know what I'm going to do. And the other guy says, well, nobody said it was going to be easy.
Yeah, being a millionaire, right. And there's another thing. He mentions his beloved Porsche back in Houston. And one of these guys that you would think would know the brand name, but not is it the one with the so-and-so cams and the overhead whatevers? And it's like everybody looks at the pictures of the big houses and the boats and the cars in the magazine, even if they don't think they'll ever be able to afford it. And when suddenly the opportunity arises, it's exciting, but it's also a little scary, because what if you blow it, And on top of that, they're nice people. I mean, even being hungry, greedy, whatever you want to call it, doesn't make them bad. It just makes them people who'd like to do better than they're doing. And then if they get it, like you just said, they don't know what the hell they'll do with it. They haven't got it, And then the fact that the one guy who has control over the deal, the beachcomber guy, that the money is of no interest to him. That the idea that he could be living in a fancier place in a better world means nothing to him. And when they say to him, he says, what would I do somewhere else? And they say, well, you wouldn't have to earn a living and work because you'd have all this money. And he kind of looks at him and says, yeah, but a man should work. A man should do something.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not about earning a living. It's about a lifestyle. And it's about something that maybe if his ancestor hadn't owned the beach or whatever, he never even would have wound up there. But if that's where he is, that's his place in the universe, and he's found it, And he's bemused more than offended or disagreeable about the idea that anybody would think he'd want anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, I got to tell you, in a world where all of us are trying to increasingly more difficultly survive and thrive, you envy the hell out of this guy's attitude about that. When you watch this movie, you think, boy, I wish I was that centered, that all these things I'm supposed to like and that I've bought into don't matter. And by the way, that shot, which is from the very end of the film, gives away a little bit what you said about Riegert's character coming back, because you notice what it says on the wall? It says it's the McIntyre Hotel.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
Look at that. I saw it instantly. I thought, oh, wait, that wasn't there before.
No kidding.
Oh, that's
so
wonderful. I didn't catch that. I'm glad you mentioned that.
Oh.
Maybe. Yeah, that over on the left there, the red letters.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it's a film you might want to watch more than once and over the years. And once more, I go into my theme song of buy the damn disc and hold on to it and treasure it. And those of you, how can I say this without sounding like I'm being sort of too cut to the chase? But I'm going to say it anyway. This is a date picture. You find somebody who's special to you and who thinks you're special to them. You watch this, and based on their reaction, you'll know. I mean, I could like somebody who didn't particularly like this or found it was too slow or was expecting, but not somebody who didn't find themselves charmed by it.
There's one point you mentioned, Lou, where you talk about the characters who kind of go out, they get drunk, things are said, verbalized, etc., and so forth. But then the next day, they're still all, civil and friendly and whatnot. And this scene in particular here is really interesting because it's played so well. McIntyre, after he's realized he's fallen in love with this place, he's trying to convince Denis Lawson, let's trade our lives. Let's switch. I'll give you my Porsche. You can have my apartment. You can take my job back in Texas. The car's paid off, blah, blah, blah. And then he starts talking about Lawson's, I guess, girlfriend or wife. I'm not.
Yeah, I don't know.
And he's like, I wanted to bring her up too. Like, we were talking and I think she's into me and blah, 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 and all this sort of stuff. And Lawson just plays it so brilliantly, I thought, with just that expression on his face, kind of like, yeah, I've heard all this before. Yeah, okay.
He doesn't feel he doesn't feel in the least bit threatened in that relationship.
Yeah, exactly.
Because he knows, she's a hot chick and people look at her and that's fine. But meanwhile,
well, it's also that by this point in the movie, they like each other, and they didn't start off that way. It's like it's just two buds. If you have somebody who is a friend of yours and you end up drinking and you get a little bit sloshed, sometimes you say things that you probably shouldn't say, and it's like, but that's your bud. It's like you're just talking.
Yeah, exactly.
So
well,
I would say though, one of the things that, and this is something that I might need to sort of pay a bit more attention to on the rewatch. The McIntyre character, I didn't see the point where he realized that he wanted to stay in this town. Like it felt to me a little bit out of the blue. And so I get, sorry, what's that?
As soon as he started going to collect seashells.
Okay. So again, I think this is something I'm going to have to rewatch and pay a bit more closer attention to, because I had thought at first they were going to go with that trope of, the big city oil guy falling in love with the place, but it kept not happening. And I thought, okay, well, maybe they're not going to do that. And all of a sudden it did. So that was something that maybe I didn't pick up on fast enough. And yeah, that's the one thing that I would think, like, yeah, okay, maybe. And then Peter Capaldi's character was pretty funny, and it was a thrill seeing him as a young guy.
Who, if you had told him when he got this job, someday you're going to be Doctor Who, he would have been shocked. Yeah. One of the things we usually do a lot of in these that we are so bemused and happily so, that we haven't done, but I'm starting to look at some of the production background. Do you know who the director, Bill Forsyth, really wanted to be McIntyre?
No.
Both Michael Douglas and Henry Winkler, it says, were actively pursued.
No, they would have been wrong, I think.
Absolutely, they would have been. Yeah. It would have been a wholly different movie. And it says he always wanted Burt Lancaster, but Lancaster insisted his standard at that time, $2 million. And that's about a third of the total budget of the movie. But when Warner Brothers heard that Lancaster wanted to do it, but they needed the money, they gave him more money to pay for him. So, that's because, and I can see them looking at that and saying, well, that suddenly makes it a more viable financial proposition because, oh boy, I tell you.
All right.
Anyway,
what do you guys think? Any final thoughts on this film?
Just that it's lovely and it's worth your time. You should definitely watch it if you're looking for something that will bring you up.
Yeah, no superheroes, no fight scenes, and just heart. Oh wow!
Darn it! I went into this expecting like a vigilante in a costume, fighting crime, the local Scottish hero, and gosh darn it.
Well, see, and the only thing polluting the air up there were the fighter jets who practice over the ocean outside of this town, and the helicopter. So,
Yeah, and I mean that goes back to what I was saying before about all these random occurrences, the random fighter jets, the random mermaid, the random rabbit.
Well, that's life, though. I mean, look around your own community and think about how did everything that is here get to be here? Because it wasn't all here to start with.
Yeah.
Things just happen, and people cross paths, and establishments get created, and rhythms and patterns of behavior start to occur. It's just, that's kind of the magic of the show, I think, is that all of this is here, and all of these things are happening because that's day-to-day life in this place. And when you get outside your normal place, you get to see that things aren't the same everywhere else. This movie kind of brings that home.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at the various reviewers of the time, And there's a great line from Janet Maslin, who was the New York Times critic then. Get this and see how perfect it is about this movie. Quote, genuine fairy tales are rare. So is filmmaking that is thoroughly original in an unobtrusive way. Bill Forsyth's quirky, disarming local hero is both.
No,
and then she says, local hero is a funny movie, but it's more apt to induce chuckles than knee slapping.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
it demonstrates Mr. Forsyth's uncanny ability for making the audience sense that something magical is going on, even if that something isn't easily explained.
So genre, guys, what sort of genre would you place this film in? Because I don't think it's a comedy.
It's fish out of water.
Yeah.
Fish out of water. Okay.
Yeah. Or out of oil.
Out of oil.
But look, it's just something you should all see and share. See and
have a glass of scotch with it too, I would say.
Absolutely. I can recommend several. But
all right. Well, on that note, audience, thank you again for listening to us ramble on in this.
Oh, here was something that might have made me never ever watch it if I knew it. Wait a minute. During his 2000 campaign for the presidency, Al Gore told Oprah Winfrey that this was his favorite film.
Boy.
But hey, even a broken clock can be right twice a day or twice enough.
And on that note,
we went a little shorter than we do because, frankly, it's so perfect. There isn't a lot to say except it's pretty darn perfect.
Yeah.
So please do go give it a shot. And we've gone from crazy to mellow. And coming up next, well, you knew we'd finally get around to the two of them, but we didn't know, perhaps, that they're both in the same film. And that is, would you believe, John Wayne, Rock Hudson, a couple of football stars, and the Civil War and its aftermath. So, how's that for a tease of next time? And we love you keeping coming back. And like Hangry said, the fact that these things get on first with the Pro Show channel, and then a couple of months later are brought up again at T3PO. I think it'd be really interesting if those of you who rewatch it for a second time, our comments or the movie or both, tell us about how your opinion may have changed or how your feelings about it may have mellowed or gone forward or negative. I don't know. Because, you know, the other great thing about all these great movies is that they are, thank God, the technology gives us the right and the ability to watch them again in a year or two or several months. And that's a good thing. It's our culture. We're entitled to it.
as many times as you like if you've purchased it. Now, on that note, thank you very much for listening to us. Thank you very much for your engagement and your continuous views on our own little productions here. Give us your comments. Leave us your feedback. We love to hear them. We love to read them. Have you seen the film? Are you going to see the film now? Did you see the film? What did you think of it? What was your favorite part? What part didn't you like? Anything goes, fair game. And of course, if you have any suggestions for future films for us to review, please drop them in the comments below. And on that note, thank you once again for listening to us, and we will see you next time on The Genre Guys.
We hope you enjoyed that special presentation of The Genre Guys here on T3PO. Be sure to subscribe to this channel for more content like it. And if you want to enjoy every episode of The Genre Guys as soon as they are released, be sure to become a member at WW Pro's YouTube channel. What were your thoughts on this amazing film? Let us know in the comments below, and thank you so much for watching. T3PO. Please comment, like, and share this video, and don't forget to subscribe to That Park Place Podcasts Online, your source for exclusive content and highlights from WDW Pro, The Pro Show, and That Park Place for all the news that should be fun.